I want our viewers to keep in mind that when we tell people they're urging people to go south, this isn't just 100 or 500 or even 1,000 people. This is hundreds of thousands of people moving to an area where there are already hundreds of thousands of people. The situation there is dire. So how do you see this? Is it a PR stunt? Because there's fighting going on where they're telling people that they will be safe.
Just have to be honest and say that a good portion of this effort is PR. It is to reassure Western audiences so that they don't bring additional pressure on the Israeli government to take better care of trying to prevent civilian casualties. Because, you know, a lot of this famous map that's been put out of like whatever, this huge number of districts or whatever, telling people to go, you know, to this place or get out of here. But there's no path to get there in many cases. Because of all this massive rubble that you've seen in all these images, people can't physically get to some of these places. And even once they get there, there's no guarantee that that place will not also be hit with rockets. As I think what that previous map you had up there a minute ago, or you know, that one right there, yeah, you see that all over the strip, everywhere, there's still bombs going on, even in the south where the civilians have been told to go to safety. And like in Rafah, right there on the border with Egypt, that's a city of 288,000 people normally. But UN officials expect that there could be up to 1 million there within 2 or 3 days. And there's simply not an infrastructure for that. There's not enough food, water, sanitation, just place to go to the bathroom. You just can't do that. And of course, that is when you start getting diseases and many other kinds of problems that could cause death for the civilians.
Yeah, the situation could get so much dire moving forward. Colonel, I want to get your thoughts on this recent Wall Street Journal report that says IDF forces may flood underground tunnels controlled by Hamas with seawater. What are the pros and cons of this tactic if they indeed follow through with it?
Yeah, on the pro side, from the Israeli perspective, obviously that's 10 times, 100 times easier and less costly for their troops as opposed to going in like they have done in the past, or like the U.S. did in the Vietnam tunnels, where you had to go through and clear them all out, and that's very high casualty producing operations. It's very difficult, very time consuming. So it's a lot easier to just fill them with seawater, of course, from their perspective. But there are tremendous potential downsides from that because not merely do you have the problem with potentially drowning the very hostages that we're trying to get out of all these different nationalities, but it also could destroy the soil so much underneath some of the buildings that whole buildings may collapse. Apparently that's happened in the past. Another thing is, and maybe even a longer term, that it could salinate the aquifers under there, making it very difficult, if not impossible in some areas, to grow crops. And so once this war is over, it will for many years, decades possibly, ruin the water and the ability for the people to live. So we could have catastrophic environmental capacity for the people who have to live there after this war is over.
And you think about the public perception that you were talking about earlier. We spoke with an IDF spokesperson in the last hour, and he could not confirm or deny that option, that tactic, was still on the table, and he wouldn't go any further than that. The U.S. is weighing a multi-billion-dollar package for Israel, but officials are growing pretty wary of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's reluctance to allow sufficient aid into Gaza. Here's what State Department spokesperson Matt Miller said yesterday. Let's take a listen.
You see the reports from UNRWA and from other UN agencies that the places where civilians are going are overcrowded. They need more humanitarian assistance. They need more food and water. And in that respect, we don't think Israel is doing enough.
So you look at public perception, you look at the civilian casualties mounting, and that will only continue to get worse as the fighting continues and as the day goes on. Do you think at this point, when we're talking about a new aid package, there should be stipulations, there should be some contingencies to receiving that aid, whether it's financial or military purposes? Do you think that this could cause U.S. support to wane?
Yeah, there's a lot of different views on that. Some people are saying, look, don't put any constraints on this at all. They're fighting their 9/11, afterwards. They're fighting their war on terror, and they've got to go after it. Don't handcuff them. That's on the one hand. But on the second hand, it's like, okay, look, we're on the line here too. There is a moral component. If you literally don't care about the civilian population and tens of thousands end up dying, and a lot of these bombs and other intelligence capacities come from the United States, then we're tagged with that as well. And probably the most important thing for the Israeli Defense Forces right now is to maintain Western and primarily American support, because they already have the anger of the Arab world. If they lose that, then they could lose the ability to even continue this war, because I'm telling you, all of these images, and many of the ones that you've shown here on this show, of this terrible civilian casualties, and especially the kids, it's just anguishing sometimes. And there is a limit to how far the American public is going to go to say, yes, we're going to give this with no constraints. I think it's reasonable, it's prudent, and it's strategically smart for us to say there are limits, there are strings to this, because our name is on the line as well.